Antonio Pierce says your resume is on the grass. What lasting impression will the Raiders leave in 2023? And whose jobs are on the line? It's the Raiders and Broncos. One last hurrah at Allegiant. Ahead on the Silver and Black Show. A lot of questions loom in 2024. We're going to get answers with a little help from our friends. ESPN's Paul Gutierrez stops by to break down the crucial decisions ahead. Former Raider great Matt Millen tells us what to expect on the field Sunday. And Raiders defensive standout Malcolm Koonce sits down to talk about his career year in the Silver and Black. Happy New Year, everyone, and welcome into the Silver and Black Show. I'm Theoharis. The Raiders face the Broncos in a season finale that on paper doesn't count. Both teams have been eliminated from the playoffs. But for Antonio Pierce, it matters big time. Mark Davis has a tough decision to make. Does Davis remove AP's interim tag, or does he look for a new coach? Every piece of information gathered on how this team responds to Pierce is crucial. Ownership will look to answer questions like, when there's nothing on the line other than professional pride and their head coach's future, what do these players do? Do they come out swinging like they're still in the hunt, or do they look uninspired? Pierce at best can finish 5-4, but 3 of those 4 losses were one-score games. So to date, this Raiders team has battled under Coach Pierce. And Sunday, we'll find out if they believe they have one more thing to fight for. To talk more about the future of the Raiders, let's say hello to Raiders ESPN NFL Nation reporter Paul Gutierrez. And Paul, I know you're going to be a busy man over the next couple of weeks, so we appreciate a little bit of time. Happy New Year.
Same to you, Amber. Thanks. And again, we're talking offseason. What offseason? I mean, this is just kind of the thing. I mean, we're talking about not only the head coach, right, but also pretty important positions that need to be filled when it comes to the general manager and also the quarterback. I mean, and all those things are kind of just interconnected going forward, because you ask one question about one of those job descriptions, and it opens up 27 other questions about each one of those other things too. So yeah, it's going to be a little bit busy, but hey, that's what we're here for. It's fun.
Well, hey, that's why you get paid the big bucks. Let's break it all down. How much do you think? Let's start with Antonio Pierce. How much do you think this last game influences whether or not he gets the full-time job?
Depends upon whether or not they come out and if they're flat and they get embarrassed, then yeah, that's going to be a big strike against him. He's shown a lot already. I mean, blowing out the Chargers at home, beating the Chiefs on the road for only the second time in over 10 years. Those are huge marks that go for him when it comes to Mark Davis. You know, the flat effort early on anyway against the Colts, losing 3-0, a record 3-0, a record low-scoring game for an indoor game against the Vikings. You know, those kind of even things out there. So it all kind of depends upon which way Mark Davis wants to go with this. And we saw this storyline play out a couple years ago. The locker room was solidly behind Rich Bisaccia, and Mark Davis, the Raiders owner, he wanted more of an X's and O's guy, so he went that way. It didn't work out. We'll see now, though, if he takes the temperature of the locker room more so this time than he did 2 years ago.
I know it's hard to take the temperature of every single player and hard to poll everyone, but where do you think the players stand on Antonio Pierce? Do you think the majority believe he should be the head coach?
Yes, a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no other way to put it. Davante Adams has come out and said, that's my vote. He gets my vote. I want this guy back. It was very similar, again, to 2 years ago when you had guys in there standing up and saying, yeah, Rich Bisaccia, they rallied behind him. They got to the playoffs, and it just didn't work out for him and that staff going forward. This feels different. This feels different because there's something that's really important to Mark Davis, and Mark Davis told me this at the time when he promoted Antonio Pierce from linebacker coach to interim coach, was that he understands the culture of this organization. As they say in the introductions at the stadium, right, Amber? There's 31 NFL teams, and then there's the Raiders. And he understands that, and he gets it. He was, as he said in his introductory presser the day after Halloween, he was the guy growing up in Compton, rocking listening to NWA, rocking the Raider caps and things like that. And I'm of a certain age, too, a certain vintage, so I remember that well. So that means a lot to Mark Davis, too. Beyond that, it's about winning games and being in games. And you mentioned that earlier, that they've been one-score games. Even the game that they lost big against the Chiefs at home, they were up 14-0. So they've been in every single game.
I know you just mentioned Davante Adams. We know he's being vocal, but do you get the sense that the players are being asked their opinion by ownership? I know they're offering it, but are they being consulted?
Not the rank and file players, the bigger name players, the Davante Adams, the Max Crosbys, those kinds of guys. Yeah, there's no doubt that Mark Davis has a unique relationship with the faces of the franchise, so to speak. The same way that his father, the late great Al Davis, did when he was running the organization back in the day too. There were certain players that he would go to get the temperature of the locker room, like I said earlier. So yeah, there's certain guys in there that are going to carry a little bit more sway, and I think you have to look and see how many zeros at the end of their paychecks. Those are the guys that are going to have some opinions that are going to weigh a little bit more.
Well, I doubt Aiden O'Connell's opinion is being asked because he's just a rookie. But look, he had 10 games to convince the Raiders that he should at least get to compete for the starting job next year. Where do you think he stands in that effort?
Again, it all depends. So that's one of the questions, right?
They're all connected,
yeah, they're all connected because who's the general manager next year? Who makes that call? Who's the head coach? Who makes that call? Antonio Pierce hitched his wagon to Aiden after he benched Jimmy Garoppolo when he was assigned the job. There's going to be lots of names floating out there, whether it's Justin Fields, whether it's a certain quarterback from Michigan, if there's a certain Michigan man running the organization. There's, do they trade up to try to get one of those top 2 or 3 quarterbacks that can be there? The Heisman Trophy winner shouted out AP when he won the Heisman because of his connection with him going back to Arizona State. So again, we can't really. There's more questions than answers, obviously, but for this situation right now, it's even more so.
I want to get the temperature of some of the players because I know you talk to them a lot. And starting with Davante, I think a lot about Davante. He kind of was put in a position he didn't sign up for. He came here to play with his buddy. He had a quarterback change. Then he had a coaching change. And then he was put with a rookie quarterback. And he's remained very professional all throughout this. Where do you think he stands right now? And do you think, they have him under contract for another year at least. It'd be a lot of dead cap money. But do you think he's saying, I got to know, guys, what you're doing here at quarterback?
No doubt, because, those was it Taco Bell commercials? They can only go so far. But no, he's the ultimate pro. He's the pro's pro. I've talked to him many times on the record, off the record. Of course, those off the record conversations are going to stay here. But there's stories that I've written where I've talked to him before the firings and the replacements happened mid-season. He was telling me that this is not what he signed up for, exactly what you just said. And there was a frustration starting to build in there. He's still on pace for a good season. I know he's an alternate for the Pro Bowl. It's in danger of breaking his Pro Bowl streak. But, it's one of those weird things where what if they do want him to move up in the draft? He is probably the biggest trade chip that you have. And I'm not advocating one way or the other. But if you want to move up right now, the Raiders would pick like 11th. That's probably those top 3 quarterbacks are all going to be gone by that point if that's the decision whoever the GM is wants to go. So that kind of defeats the purpose, right? If you're going to trade Davante Adams to bring in a young quarterback, well, who's he going to throw the ball to? Not a potential Hall of Famer in Davante because he'll be gone at that point. So they're going to have to figure that out as well. And also, again, take Davante's temperature to see exactly where his mind is, where he wants to be, and what he thinks too. And that's not letting the players kind of run the situation. But, yeah, there's certain players, like we said earlier, that their words, their actions are going to carry a little bit more sway in the decision-making process.
You know what, Paul? I was going to ask you a question about what direction you think they'll go at quarterback, whether it, be aggressive and move up in the draft, as you just spoke about, or you mentioned Justin Fields or Russell Wilson even. But I can't even ask you that question because I know your answer is going to be, well, who's making the pick in the draft? Who's the GM? Who's the coach? So a lot of unknowns when it comes to the quarterback position. But let's move on to the running back position. It's obvious that the Josh Jacobs situation wasn't handled very well last year. What about Champ Kelly? If Champ Kelly stays as the GM, do you think that he will sign Josh to a long-term contract?
Here's the thing: is that if you had asked me that 3 weeks ago, you probably would have said, well, sure, absolutely. But at what price? Now you see what Zamir White provided the team and showing what he can do. And again, it's part of this weird situation in the NFL where running backs are being the position in and of itself and the contracts that go to running backs are being devalued so much. So if you can get similar production, if not better production, for a fraction of the cost, that's where you go. And that's why the high-profile running backs were so upset during the offseason and holding out and holding Zoom calls and trying to figure out what they wanted to do because of that situation. I'll quote the Godfather here a little bit. It's never personal. It's always just business.
Yeah.
But it feels like it's personal business here for Josh Jacobs.
Yeah, Mama, don't let your babies grow up to be running backs. Throw them out there in the flat. Let them catch a pass. They'll make more money. Let's talk about the defense. The defense is top 8 in scoring. That's really impressive from where they started. They morphed into this dominant unit kind of right in front of our eyes. From a roster standpoint going forward, do you think they keep much of this unit that's very young together in 2024?
Again, who's the defensive coordinator now? But yes,
that was my follow-up. Yeah. I mean, if AP's there, then the defense probably gets to keep their coordinator. If not, it's a big change. I mean, there's so many unanswered questions.
And that's the thing. I mean, if we're just operating in a bubble here, and let's just say, yeah, it is Antonio and Patrick Graham comes back. Yeah, I think they want to keep that unit together because, dare I say it, this is a borderline elite defense when it is humming. And we've seen this thing hum for about the past month or so. And even, again, talking to Davante Adams, he liked it. He said it's kind of exciting to see the defense carrying the team. Then he stopped himself and realized, well, that means that the offense isn't carrying its end of the bargain. Okay, yeah, it's not that exciting, but it's pretty cool for the offense to see that. So, again, we're talking, and I consider myself kind of a Raider historian. I can't recall the last time a Raider defense was able to carry a team to victories the way it did. And even when you're losing 3-0, the defense did its job.
They did, and there were a couple of gems, I think, that they found on defense. Everybody was looking at Tyree Wilson. Meanwhile, a lot of other people emerged. What was the biggest surprise for you? It could be offensive as well. Just a player that you wouldn't have thought would have gotten an opportunity or would have emerged that really contributed and that you're excited about for 2024.
And this is going to be kind of a cop-out here because it happened so recently, but Jack Jones. I mean, the guy is a kind of a game changer out there with the way that he played at cornerback, scoring the pick sixes in consecutive weeks, how friendly and amiable he is in the locker room, how open he is to talking about things. Now, I'm talking about from a reporter or a beat writer perspective. Love that kind of stuff. Beyond that, just how Robert Spillane really kind of commandeered that defense from the middle linebacker position and wearing the green dot, because this is a guy who hadn't really done it on a consistent basis before. So if you're looking at one consistent that's been there from all the way through, and I know Max Crosby is in the running for Defensive Player of the Year, as he should be, but he's probably raised his bar so high. If you're asking who's kind of a surprise, I'd have to say Spillane or Jack Jones.
I agree with you. Hey, Paul, thanks so much. You're always a wealth of information. I'm going to be checking in with you a lot because I feel like you're the man with all the answers going forward. So thanks for being on the show.
Thank you. That's my New Year's resolution.
All right, coming up. Speaking of surprises, how about Malcolm Koonce? He's burst onto the scene in his third year in the silver and black. We sit down with the standout defensive end next. The Silver and Black Show is powered by Cox, proud partner of the Las Vegas Raiders. Allegiant, the official airline of the Las Vegas Raiders. Low fares, non-stop flights. Book now only at Allegiant.com. 1800 Tequila, official partner of the Raiders. Taste is everything. Please drink responsibly. Ticketmaster, the official ticket marketplace of the Las Vegas Raiders and the NFL. Welcome back. The Raiders' defensive line has definitely been a strength of this team, and Malcolm Koonce has been a huge part of that. Malcolm, thanks for joining us here on the Silver and Black Show. Well, this team has really never quit through a very, very tough season. You guys know that the playoffs are not in reach anymore, but what is your motivation for this game?
Just playing, just enjoying it. Like, you think about days like this when you're like a young kid, so it never gets old. So you're always excited for game day no matter what, if there's no playoffs or anything.
You guys do know Jarrett Stidham well. You were on this team last year. Is this Sunday an opportunity to see him up close and personal, as Antonio Pierce said? He said,
yeah.
We're looking forward to seeing him up close and personal again.
Yeah, definitely see him in a different light, if that makes sense, yeah.
Yeah, going up against him, you're pretty familiar with him, right?
Yeah.
I had somebody tell me you don't only sack the quarterback, you sack the ball. You go after the ball. What is that mentality?
Well, I think that's one of the best plays in football. So anytime you can take the ball away from the offense is always like a great thing. So getting a sack, it feels good, but getting a strip sack feels even better. So
who taught you that? Where did that start?
Just practice.
It's been a big focus, right, this year
much,
of Patrick Graham.
Yeah, just get the ball, yeah.
Somehow. 7 sacks, 16 quarterback hits. It's really been a fun year, by far your best year as a pro. What would you say has clicked for you this year?
I think more just focusing on being consistent, like not just having like a splash play here and there, just trying to be overall a good player. So, yeah.
Well, I imagine having a guy like Max Crosby around kind of helps.
Yeah,
He sent out a tweet after the Kansas City game, and it said Malcolm Koonce. That's the tweet. Did you see that?
Yeah, I did see it, yeah.
What did you think when you see that? I mean, here's a guy that could win Defensive Player of the Year, giving you that type of respect.
I mean, I appreciate Max. Since I've been here, he kind of took me underneath his wing. So anytime Max give me any type of praise, it always good, because seeing him work day in and day out and seeing him be the first one in, last one out, it's always great.
Do you think that's rubbed off on the entire defense?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely kind of like trying to take some characteristics from Max, because Max is going to give 150% every play, no matter what. You can't tell if he's tired. You can't tell. He's the same person every single play. So you definitely got to match his energy. Well, try to match his energy.
Well, I tell you, you've been looking like that out there. And that Chiefs game, that was really fun to watch you out there on Christmas Day. You became the first defender to sack Patrick Mahomes 3 times in one game. He's been around a long time, so that's pretty cool. Did you reflect on kind of the gravity of that accomplishment in that game in particular for you?
I don't. In the moment, no, I don't really think it like set in. I mean, now I kind of think about like, oh wow, that was really cool what I did, but. I think that week I was just focused on just winning the game. That's it. Yeah.
What led to having such a great game? Because Patrick Mahomes is hard to catch.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it was just like PG's plan and defensively understanding that there's going to be a game where we're kind of like chasing around, like, you know, when you have like a toddler and you kind of chase him around a little bit. So, yeah.
It's the old Rocky Balboa chasing the chicken around the yard.
Yeah,
it's just like that. This defense has definitely been the backbone of this team this season. What can you point to as why it's improved so much, especially from Patrick Graham's first season, where you're here, to the second?
I think it's a number of things. It's I think like us being more comfortable with the scheme. Also, I think like you said earlier, like an emphasis on getting the ball. So just trying to get our offense in the best place so they can play the best. So I think it's like focuses like that.
What would you say that the identity of this defense is, the mentality is of this defense? I'm sure you guys, it almost seems like you identified what you wanted to be, and then you guys morphed into that.
Yeah. I think our identity is probably just go 110%, kind of like when we was talking about like with Max and his effort. So definitely Max being like the leader of like kind of our defense, just trying to match his energy of just giving it all every single play. So.
We've talked a lot in this show about Antonio Pierce and his future. In your opinion, should he be the head coach of the Raiders next year?
I love AP, so I love if he was the coach next year. So, yeah.
What has he brought to the team?
Just personality, just overall vibe feels good. It feels right, if that makes sense. Yeah.
That does make sense, and I think that bodes well for his future to have players say that. Malcolm Koonce, thanks so much for being here with us. We can't wait to see. I know that you're going to be getting after Jarrett Stidham, and even more so, we're looking forward to next year in the silver and black for you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Coming up, Matt Millen knows a thing or two about the Raiders versus everybody mentality. The former linebacker tells us what to expect on the field Sunday against the Broncos next on the Silver and Black Show. Look to finish strong against the Broncos this Sunday. Former Raiders linebacker Matt Millen will be calling the game for Fox. He joins us now for his perspective on the Raiders season. Matt, Happy New Year. It's good to see you.
Happy New Year to you. Good to see you as well.
I think the last time we spoke was preseason, so I haven't talked to you since Antonio Pierce was named interim coach. What's been your assessment of the job that he's done these past 2 months?
Well, first of all, you have to understand when you're stepping into the shoes that he did, that is not easy at all. The biggest thing you've got to be able to do is get the confidence of the team. And although you may be, in his case, he was the linebacker coach, but if you're a coordinator, offensive or defensive, it doesn't guarantee you that you have the confidence of anybody. So I think what he's done is he's really done a nice job. I mean, they're 4-4 with him. You'd like to see more wins in the column, but everybody would like to see more wins in the column. I just think he's done a good job and instilled some confidence, and I think the players like him. And I think that's a difference. It makes a difference, and so I think Antonio should be considered. And I also think you have to consider others. But I think he's one of those guys who's done a nice job and deserves to be looked at for the head job.
Well, as you said, the guys like him. They speak a lot about Antonio Pierce being a former player and that they connect with him because of that. You've been coached by guys who played in the NFL, like Tom Flores, and then you've been coached by guys who didn't, like Joe Gibbs. Is there a difference for you?
No. So the biggest thing is, as a player, what you want is good information, and you want honesty, and you want straightforwardness. And a lot of those characteristics people aren't comfortable with. I think I was always comfortable with it. Just tell me exactly what you think. If you think I'm doing fine, you don't need to tell me, because I already know I think I'm doing fine. But if you think I'm lousy, you think I'm not doing something right, you got to be able to have the guts to be able to come up and talk to guys and tell them, look, you got to get better. Here's how you get better. You got to be able to correct this. You can't get caught in this. And, so you just have to be pretty straightforward. I think Antonio does that. It does help him that he's a younger guy, and it does help that he can relate to the players. He did play. And so, and he was a good player. So I think those are all strong things, but there's a lot of good players that have gone into coaching and have not had success. So you still have to have the ability to be able to lead. And that's something that's really hard to talk about. I mean, easy to talk about, but hard to do. And most people are, when they have that quality, it's something that is, it's something that they're kind of just born with. And a natural born leader, they're hard to find. And when they can relate to people and do that, then you're way ahead of the curve.
Well, you called that let's talk about the game. You called that first matchup against the Broncos back in week 1. And if you look at this defensive unit now, it feels like a completely different defense for the Raiders than back in week 1. What are the differences you have seen the growth over this year?
Well, I think the biggest thing is they're playing together now way more than what they did in the beginning. And I think that happens in this age of free agency and, adding guys and taking guys away. I think what they lacked early, in my opinion, and is physicality. And I think versus the run, that was the thing that I wanted to see improve, and I think it did improve. So the game that's being played right now is not the same game that I played, and so you have to be able to adjust. And I think they have adjusted. It's more of a passing game, but when they do decide to run on you, you still have to maintain some of the traits that you got to be tough. You have to be physical, and if you can't do that, you're going to struggle. So I think they've been able to do some of that.
They've had some guys really come on, and you look at the history of the Raiders. They have a history of great linebackers. You're one of them. They have a guy like Robert Spillane that came over as a free agent. That's really been a nice addition. Do you think he can be the long-term answer as a guy to man the middle of the field there in the linebacking core?
Well, they picked him to be that guy. So the answer is he better be, right? And so I think he's played well. I think he's played solid. You want him to take another step as well. Don't forget, this is another system that he's in, coming from another place. So I think he's played. I think he's played pretty well this year, and I do think overall the front seven has gotten better as the season has gone on, and that's a positive.
When you're calling this game, you're going to be looking out there, and you will not see Russell Wilson as the quarterback of the Broncos, which is kind of bizarre to a lot of people. Probably played his last game in Denver. I'm sure you guys will talk about that a little bit during the broadcast. But I'm wondering, do you think the Raiders should maybe give him a look in 2024?
I think there's going to be a lot of teams that look at him. Look, Russ didn't play poor. He actually played pretty good. But you're going to have to be able to adapt to what he does, and he'll have to adapt to you. So I think with Sean Payton, I think Sean tried to adapt and adjust. He's just not used to a guy taking off all the time. And so I think sometimes what happens is you'll call a play, you put it in, you're setting this play up for, maybe from the first quarter you did something, and now you want to work off of something else, a play that's been in previous. And so you work to get to that point, and then you make the call with an expected outcome, and then Russ doesn't see it right, and he just takes off and runs, and that's his game. And so sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't, but I think from a play caller's point of view, you're like, what the heck is he doing? Why is he running out there? And so I think that can get frustrating for both sides. I still think that Russ. I think Russ is a good quarterback. I think if you do get Russell Wilson, you're going to have to understand exactly what he is and make that fit. You have to adapt to him.
So instead, the Raiders are going to see Jarrett Stidham, who they know very well, was here last year, won a couple of games. What kind of offense do you think the Raiders can expect from the Broncos with Stidham?
Well, with Stidham, it's going to be more of a, so he's not going to have the movement. He's not going to be one of those guys who's going to scramble around and you don't have to worry about breaking coverage as much. Now, it's not that he can't. He just is more comfortable not doing that. And so you'll see an offense that is more kind of to the liking of what Sean Payton does. Sean sets things up. He'll work one thing off of another. He's good at it. He's an excellent play caller. The difference is while you will get some movement, you're not going to get Russell Wilson movement. And so you'll be able to take a couple of chances.
Matt, on the other side, the Raiders offense has struggled to score points with that. I know they scored 63 points against the Chargers, but with the exception of that game, they've struggled to score points. And you know what? The Broncos defense has played a little bit better of late. How should Bo Hardegree attack the defense?
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I think Denver has gotten better against the run. I think the 3 young linebackers over there that are pretty good. They're not a defense that tries to get up the field very much. So their defensive line. So I think we're going to see kind of a carbon copy of what we saw at the beginning of the season. It was a close game. It came down to 1 point, a mixed extra point. So I think we'll see the same and try to just get a run game going. It's going to be a little more difficult, although Zamir White's playing pretty good. I like his game. And he can catch the ball out of the backfield, so that's another good thing. But I think you get your game. You got to protect your young quarterback. We keep forgetting that he's just a rookie, and he's a 4th-round pick. And so it's not like there were high expectations immediately for him. But I think that Aiden's kind of answered the call, and I think you still have to protect him. I think you have to be able to run the football and then throw when you want to throw. And if they can do that, if they can dictate the passing game, then I think you're in pretty good shape.
You think Aiden's done a good job? Think he could be the starter next year, or do you have to look at a bunch of people?
I still think he has a ways to go. I want to talk to him just because I had him at Purdue. I like the way he saw the field. You could see the steps that he took when he was at Purdue as he grew into the job, and I think the same thing is going to be now. He's going to be a lot better next year than what you're seeing right now. He is being force-fed week by week. Even now, there's some carryover, but being a rookie and being in the National Football League, it is, there's a lot of great players who are in the Hall of Fame who were not very good in their rookie year. We're playing Denver right now, right? So that's good. Take a look at John Elway's first couple of years. It was
Manning struggled too.
But you could see. Yeah, everybody does. I mean, especially as a young guy. Very few young players don't struggle. And so there's the struggle there now with Aiden. But, I think he's a smart guy. I think he learns fast. And I think given time, he'll be a solid player. But he's not there right now, so you have to protect him.
All right. Well, Matt Millen, thanks so much for joining us. We're looking forward to hearing your call over on Fox. And Happy New Year to you. Enjoy it.
Same to you. Thank you very much, and go Raiders.
All right, coming up, and one last thing, why the Raiders have a head start on 2024. That's next on the Silver and Black Show. The Silver and Black Show has been brought to you by Cox, proud partner of the Las Vegas Raiders. Allegiant, the official airline of the Las Vegas Raiders. Low fares, nonstop flights. Book now only at Allegiant.com. Chevron with Techron gives you unbeatable cleaning and mileage. Chevron, together ahead. Time now for one last thing. With how bad this season started for the Raiders, there's a lot to feel good about heading into the offseason. We saw the beginning of a cultural shift inside that locker room, one that continued to evolve until they just simply ran out of time. These last 10 games, the Raiders have certainly found an identity as a gritty defensive team.
As a defense, we've talked about on this pod many times, and Pat Graham, he talked about it earlier in the season. He's like, we don't want to just be a really good defense. We want to be great. And to get to that level, we have to be able to determine games and the outcomes of it.
Having that identity gives the Raiders a head start for 2024. Each year in the NFL, we see losing teams with much less to build on become contenders. Parity is alive and well, and it's not uncommon for a team to go from worst to first. This year, 8 teams who were either last or second to last in their divisions last year are either in or still alive for the playoffs, including the Texans, Colts, Browns, Steelers, Rams, Packers, Saints, and yes, even the Falcons have a 17% chance of making the playoffs. And since the third wildcard spot in each conference was added 2 years ago, 7 teams have made the playoffs each year that had missed the cut the prior year. Just look at the 2023 Texans. They play this Sunday for the AFC South Division. They won 3 games last year, were the worst team in the NFL, and ended the season with an ill-advised win that cost them the #1 overall pick in the draft. Lovie Smith was fired, yet here they are today. The formula? They hired D'Amico Ryans, a former NFL player who players bought into. Gee, does that sound familiar? They selected the right franchise quarterback at #2 in the draft in C.J. Stroud. And their scoring defense went from 27th in the NFL to 13th. In case you're wondering, look at this. The Raiders already have a top 8 scoring defense. Yes, quarterback is still a question mark. We all know that. But as far as rosters are concerned, the Raiders are light years ahead than the Texans were. I dare you to name one star on that Texans roster last year. Let me help you out here. There were none. The Raiders have all pros like Max Crosby and Davante Adams under contract next year, plus a number of promising young players. We know there are no moral victories, and going home Sunday is not what anyone wanted. But the Raiders are onto something, and the future is bright if they just continue to build on what they started this season. That'll do it for us, but before we say goodbye, I want to give you guys a shout out to all of Raider Nation. Over the years, you have just continued to prove why you are the best fan base in all of sports. No matter the ups or the downs, you've stuck by this team through everything, and this year was no different. As tough as it got, you showed up. You always, of course, showed out. And this has been the most watched season of the Silver and Black Show to date, and that's because of you guys. We appreciate you, and we hope that we delivered a program that kept you entertained and informed. Also, special thanks to our producers and crew for all they do to make this show possible. We're going to see you guys at Allegiant Stadium this Sunday. It's Raiders and Broncos. Have a great weekend, everyone.